But if this contingency should become an unfortunate reality, you are and should be, in my opinion, held responsible. You agree, don't you, that if somebody drinks and drives and that they crash into somebody's child as a consequence of this, that they should be held responsible. Not the mother, not the father. If somebody has to pay for this funeral, it should be the drunk driver. And if somebody has to have their rights violated, if somebody has to go to jail, it should be the drunk driver, the individual who created this situation, and not the other individuals who had nothing to do with the creation of the situation. So let's look at our two examples and let's see what the difference is. Our skater engaged in reckless behavior. He engaged in skateboarding. And as a result of this, he broke his clavicle. That was the negative consequence of his reckless behavior. Now the drunk driver, his reckless behavior was obviously drinking and driving, and the negative consequence was the dead little girl. Why should the skater be allowed to escape the consequences of his actions, so far as he is able, but not the drunk driver? Quite simply, the skater didn't bring anybody else's rights into the equation. The drunk driver did, and not just the little girl, the family of the little girl as well. Should the family have to pay for the funeral? No, the drunk driver should have to pay for the funeral. Now normally, it would be a violation of your rights to demand that you pay for somebody else's funeral. But since you created the situation, it is no longer a violation of your rights. It would be a violation of the rights of the family to require them to pay for the child. If you create somebody who is dependent upon you, you are in fact obliged to support that individual so long as we assume that he or she has rights. For example, if I had a plantation in the Sahara Desert and you wanted to visit it, so I told you you could, and I told you I would fly out and I would pick you up in my private jet. So I get my jet and I fly out there, and we're flying back to the Sahara Desert when a malfunction happens and we crash in the Sahara Desert. But I have the only canteen, because you weren't prepared. I swooped in, I picked you up from work, and I took you to go to my plantation. We didn't reach it, now we're in the Sahara Desert, and we have hundreds of miles of nothing. Well, I should be responsible for keeping you hydrated. Since I made you dependent upon me for water, I am obliged to provide that water. And if I fail to do so, it would be, essentially, murder. I think that it should be charged as murder. I don't think that saying that because somebody is dependent upon you, you can murder them makes any sense. If you've ever seen Kiss the Girls, the serial killer dragged these women into a cellar and he made them dependent upon him. But if he refused to provide for these individuals, this would have been murder. Now, if he simply imprisoned them, it would be a much lesser crime than murder. Of course, he did wind up murdering them. He didn't continue providing for them. But according to this debate, or this argument, that if someone's dependent upon you, you can kill them because you're not obliged to provide for them, then he did nothing wrong. Because these women were dependent upon him when he killed them. This is obviously absurd. So again, the issue ultimately comes down to whether or not the fetus has rights. Just something to consider.